All right, well, we're recording.
All right, awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny Kirsch. I'm a 5th grade English teacher at an all-girls school here in New York City, which is where I'm joining you from today. This is a presentation that I've given several times, although never via Google Hangout. So while I think it will go smoothly, feel free to call out at any time if I'm moving too quickly or if it seems like I'm talking about something and the screen isn't projecting what it should. I'll rely on you to be my eyes and ears out there in Texas. But thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to toggle back and forth between sharing my screen with you so that you can see my browser and some of the tools I'm going to talk about today. And then I'll try to jump back to my face too, just so it feels a little more personal. But again, just give a holler if you want me to slow down or you have any questions, and I'll try to make sure to build that in as well. I'm going to start by just toggling to my screen just to show you guys. So you should be looking at my title slide. It says using Google Apps to streamline your workload and energize your curriculum. I'm really just putting that up here for a minute to recommend that you open my blog into one of your browsers. It's www.jennykirsch.com, simply because I will be using some resources and tools from my website, and it'll be helpful for you to have access to those as well. If you're on my website, jennykirsch.com, and then you click right here on this GTA, which stands for Google Teacher Academy resources page, everything I'm going to talk to you about today is listed and linked here. So you can always go back to these as resources, get a sense of what will be covered during today's session, and makes it easier for you. You don't have to take quite so many notes. So give everyone a chance to just get that up on their browser. All right, we doing good so far? Thumbs up, everyone's okay? No?
Repeat your blog.
Oh, sure. It's Jenny Kirsch, so JennyKirsch.com. And then you're looking for the tab that says GTA Resources. It's not necessary, but it will make it probably more fun and interesting for you if you have that up. And certainly you want to have a Chrome browser up and running, which I assume you've had for most of the day anyway. So about 2 years ago in 2012, October 2012, I did something called the Google Teacher Academy. You probably heard from other members of my cohort actually today, depending on what sessions you attended. And the Google Teacher Academy happens a couple of times a year, and it's a 2-day workshop where educators from all across the world join together, varying levels of experience and familiarity with technology and Google Apps for Education, and really members from across the spectrum of the educational sphere. We had people like me who are classroom teachers, educational technologists, as well as principals and assistant principals, and everyone joins together, and it's just this very immersive kind of info dump of Google Apps for Education and really free Google tools that teachers can use in their classrooms to help either streamline their workload and make their lives easier as educators, but also give a new sort of life and interactivity to the work they're doing in the classroom, the curriculum itself. So I'm going to go over today with you quite a few of those tools that I learned about. Obviously, I'm honing in on the ones that I have found most useful in my classroom and my day-to-day work as a teacher. But I would say, take everything I'm giving you as a jumping off point. There will be things you hear about that I think will really instantly click for you as something you can work into your own classroom. And then there will be things that you might want to explore on your own later and find what works best for you. So I'm going to start just by going back to my browser. So All right. Let me just maximize a little bit. Okay, so here we are. And I made my cursor much bigger in the hopes that it'll be easier for you guys to see me navigating.
We're seeing you now, not your browser.
Say it again?
We're seeing you and not your browser right now.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Let's try again. All right, give me a second here. Still me, huh?
Yes.
Okay. How about now?
It's changing. Hold on. Yeah,
Okay.
it's your browser.
Okay, so good note. I full screened my browser and that's when you lost it, so I'll keep it smaller. All right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was just Chrome. I assume there's some familiarity with Chrome already, but it's Google's browser, and it's the browser of choice, I think, for most people nowadays. One of the main things that makes Chrome so useful is this omnibar, which is the URL bar, but in Chrome it's also a search bar. So I can type in anything, you know, it doesn't have to be a website, and Google is going to do the work of loading up the search for me. So it just skips one little step. You also have the option of having your personal and professional Google accounts connected via Chrome. So up here you see my face. This is my personal Google account up top, but down below is my school's Google account because we are a Google Apps for Education school. So I can easily toggle between these two. If I log into Google Docs and I actually need my school's Google Drive account, I can switch back and forth pretty easily. And lastly, what makes Chrome a really choice browser is the extensions. And I'm going to show you some of the extensions that I use. The Chrome Web Store, which here is linked on my blog here, Chrome Web Store, Chrome extensions. There's tons of them. There's thousands upon thousands. So certainly there are more than what I'm going to show you right now. But these are the ones that I'm going to feature if you are interested in going back to any of them and downloading them for yourself at some point. So first, this little icon is tab glue and tab scissors, and what they do is they split apart your browser windows. So if I click scissor, it instantly jumps my windows into two, so they're side by side. It's helpful if you want to look at one thing in a browser and type into a Google Doc or a spreadsheet in another.
We're only seeing half of the scissor there. They cut it down. I know what tab scissor does. So when you did it, we're only seeing one part. We're not seeing both.
You're not seeing two windows?
No, we're only seeing the window that has the pictures, like the elementary school math homework.
Okay, so, all right, so that's another problem of the screencasting, I guess.
Right.
Well, if you could see everything, you would see that it immediately split my browser in half, so I can have two separate windows. It auto sizes them side by side. And I find it useful if I'm looking over, for example, an assignment I gave and then a student's completed work in Google Drive. It's easy to refer back and forth. And then, so that was tab scissor up here, and then tab glue obviously glues them back together, although since you couldn't see them split, you're not going to see them join back up. Another one that I find really helpful is Docs Quickly, which is what I'm pointing at right now. It's like a little file folder image with a plus sign. And what that does is automatically opens up a document, a presentation, a spreadsheet, or a drawing. It's been pointed out to me before that it would be even more convenient if Forms was also in this list. I assume that's something that they may add in the future. It's not part of the options right now. But it means that whatever I'm doing on my computer, if I need to quickly start a document, I don't have to go through the steps of going into Drive and picking a folder and hitting create. I can just automatically start one of these. That's Docs Quickly. This is saved to Google Drive, which is a little bit different than Docs Quickly. Save to Google Drive will take a screenshot of the entire, you maybe saw that my browser window just scanned down. It automatically takes a screenshot or a copy of everything on your browser window. And now can you see the little dialog box that says saving to Google Drive?
I'm not seeing a dialog box, no.
Give me a second. Let me see if I can change the screen sharing settings so that you guys can see all of this.
All right, yeah, now we can see like your whole desktop instead of just the one.
Okay, great. So let's see if that makes better. And so now can you see this dialog box?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So it's been going slowly, and that's because it took a screenshot of everything on this Huffington Post education page. All of these images, all of the text. This page is obviously not one that you generally need to save for any reason, but if you had clicked on a particular article and you wanted to have easy access to it or share it with students or colleagues, by hitting Save to Drive, it automatically saves it, and now you can see in this dialog box up here, it's telling me Education News and Opinion aggregated, and the title goes on, was saved to my drive. So I can rename it if I want. I can just close if I'm satisfied with that name. In this case, I'm going to trash it because it's not something I actually needed. It was just something I was showing you guys for the sake of example. So that's Docs Quickly and Save to Google Drive. Another Chrome extension that I use quite a bit is the Google URL shortener. There are two major use cases I find that it is really helpful for. One is if you are someone who uses Twitter a lot, which I am. I tweet quite a bit, and I tweet things that are going on in my school. I tweet to keep in touch with my personal learning network, other teachers across the country and the world who I'm in contact with, or who I sometimes share articles or information with. The URL shortener will take any URL and immediately shorten it so you're not using quite as many characters in your tweet. So if I go to this article, Elementary Math is Stumping Parents about the Common Core, hot topic right now, and I click the Google URL shortener up here in my extension list, it will immediately generate this shortened URL, foo.gl, and then this string of characters. I can copy that and then paste it into a tweet, for example. I can also turn it into a QR code if I want. Another way that this one is really helpful if you don't happen to be on Twitter or need it for that reason is it makes it much easier to share links with your students. I teach 5th grade, and so my students, they have email, but they don't really use it yet. They've just been introduced to their school email account. They're not really checking it proactively. And sometimes you don't want to spend the class time it would take to get them all logged onto computers and then signed into their email accounts to retrieve a link that I have shared with them. So what I sometimes do instead is I'll use the URL shortener, and that's a very easy to write on the board and have the students just type up onto their screens. It saves time. It makes it easier to share information with them without having to rely on email. Certainly as students get older, I know in my school in particular, starting in 9th grade, we have one-to-one laptops, so those students are constantly on their laptops, they're constantly logged into email. That makes it much easier to just click a link. But for those students, or those times when you want to speed it along, the URL shortener can be really helpful. Any questions so far? Should I keep going? All right, I'm going to keep moving right along. Go back to my screen for a minute. Okay. So what else do we have here? This I'm going to talk about. It's not really a Google tool. It's a password tool. It's called 1Password. I use it, it has this Chrome extension, although it's not, again, it's not going to come in the Chrome extension store. You have to buy it from their website. It's called 1Password. But it's a password manager, so not only can you store passwords for all of the various sites you visit, it will also help you generate random passwords, really strong, sort of impenetrable passwords for your Twitter account, your email, websites that you go shopping on, whatever it may be. And of course, if you have a really great, strong password, chances are it's also a really hard to remember password. And so this 1Password manager kind of takes care of that for you. Every time you go to a website, you type in your master password, which you do have to memorize, and then it will automatically fill in the fields that any website happens to be asking for. It also stores your credit card information. You can put secure notes on there, addresses, passport numbers, ATM PIN numbers, whatever you want to store. So that's just another helpful little tool I always like to throw in there. The last Chrome extension I'm going to talk about is Awesome Screenshot, and I use this one all the time. Those of you who are working on Macs already know how easy it is to take a screenshot. I find that on PCs, a screenshot is a much more labor-intensive set of steps. And even on a Mac, it's easy to take a screenshot, but Awesome Screenshot makes it really easy to annotate it and turn it into an image file. So if I click on Awesome Screenshot, I have a couple of choices. I can capture just the part of the page that's showing right now. I can capture a selected area, the entire page, or a local image. I generally use capture selected area, and now I have this drag. So maybe I want to just capture this picture. And I've got a little bit of the title up there as well. In fact, let me do it again so I get the actual title. So I do this. I hit capture down here at the bottom. And now it's an image, and I can annotate it and edit it. I can crop it a little bit more if I want. What I find I use most often is you can draw arrows. This happens to be useful for me on Twitter. If you're tweeting something and there's something that's private that you don't really want to show, you can use this teardrop to blur something out. So now, I've obscured the name. So if you have student work in particular, you want to show a great art project or piece of writing that a student did, but you don't want to post their first and last name for the whole world to see, this becomes a really helpful tool. And then you can also annotate it with text. So I have my little, you can see the cursor flashing. Right now the text is red, but I can change it to any color I want. And I can say, check out this article. I think you'd be interested in it. And then you click done, and you can save it. So it'll save the image file for you, and you can decide where you want to put it on your desktop, save to Dropbox, to the cloud, wherever you may want it to go. And then it just becomes an image on your computer that you can attach to an email, put in a tweet, put on Facebook, print out later, project on your board, whatever you happen to want to use it for. Should I move on to Google search filter? Were there any questions about Chrome extensions? Nope. Okay, we'll keep going. So one of the things that was most interesting about the Google Teacher Academy was that they showed us all of these great features of Google tools that are free and everybody's already using to some degree. And they're not even that hard to use, but unless someone's showed you, you don't necessarily know they're there. So I'm going to show you a few things that you can do with Google Search that you might not already know about. The first is just the search filters that you can put on. So again, I use hurricane a lot because it's the robust search term. So if I search for hurricane, I get all of these results. And if I hit search tools, now I have these filters. So maybe I'm trying to track with my students or for curriculum development a particular hurricane, something that happened many years ago or something that's happening right now or in the midst of a hurricane. You can filter by time frame. You can also filter by results. So reading level is a really interesting one. It will show you, there's a few, 2% of those results are advanced. Those are probably, research papers or really high level, higher ed results. You're not going to use those with your students. And then you can go by basic or intermediate. What I thought was so interesting when we were shown this tool for the first time is that these reading levels are not just they're not just an algorithm that's choosing them. There's actually, a group of educators or people who sit down and read through these results and make decisions about what reading level they're appropriate for. So I like that it was a real person doing that work and not just a computer who doesn't actually interact with students all day long. The search filters become even more useful when you start, you're back on my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. For images. So if I search for Apple and then I filter by images, I get lots of apples, but some of them are fruit and some of them, are Apple computer. I go back up to search tools and I can search by size. So if my students want to print images, I can have them filter the size so that they're not printing enormous images. Color, depending on what you're looking for. Type, do you want a person in your picture? Do you want a clip art of an apple? Time, I don't know how useful that is for an image search that you'd be doing with your students, but I guess if it's of a person or something newsworthy, it would be. Usage rights is another one that's really helpful for students. I do blogging with my students. I know a lot of other teachers are doing something similar. So you get a sense of what the permissions are before you start posting images onto your website without appropriate permission. And then you can search by, they can show you the sizes if you're so inclined, if you know what these numbers mean. Another interesting thing about Google search is using a custom search engine. Is there anyone who's used a custom search engine before? No? Okay. So custom search engines are great tools for student research, especially for those of us who teach younger students who are really just learning how to filter through search results and figure out what's legitimate and what's relevant and what's meaningful. So it's google.com/CSE for custom search engine. And what this is going to let us do is make our own search engine. We're going to end up with our own unique URL that we can share with students. And we limit what results come in. So most of us, I think, don't want our students using Wikipedia as a resource on a class project. And again, depending on the age of your students, you might want to help guide them towards age-appropriate results so that they're not using something too basic, or on the other end of the spectrum, using something too sophisticated. So from google.com/CSE, you're going to go to Add, and now you're going to make your own search engine. So in my school, 4th grade studies ancient civilizations, I'm going to start a new tab, and I'm going to search for ancient Egypt. And I'm going to get tons of results. So the first hit is Wikipedia. I don't want my students using Wikipedia in their research. So I'm going to switch to the next result, which is the British Museum. I know this site. I know that it's a good resource. I know it has information that's going to be relevant to my students. So I can hit Control Copy. I'm going to grab that URL. I come back to Sites to Search and hit Control Paste. And now this is one site that my custom search engine will look through. I'm going to go back over to my search results, look for a few more, just so I have a more robust list of resources for my students. Scroll down, Discovering Egypt. I know this site, I can rely on this site. I will copy that URL and again add it. And then we'll just add one more for the sake of example. This is Mr. Don. I don't know if any of you use Mr. Don, but we like his website a lot for our students, especially in our younger grades for history research. So I'll use Mr. Don as well. So now I've got these 3 sites, and basically my custom search engine is going to limit my search results to only things that come from these 3 sites, which means when my students use my custom search engine, they're not going to get Wikipedia, they're also not going to get some, doctoral student's article on the pyramids or something like that. It's going to be very controlled. I scroll down a little bit, English is the language. I'm going to change it to Miss Kirsch's Egypt search engine. So when my students when they follow this link, they're going to see this as the title of the search engine. And then I'm going to click Create. And what I get now is my custom search engine. I can get a code if I want to add it to my personal site. I can modify it through the control panel. But in this case, I want to view it on the web with my public URL. So this is what it's going to look like for my students. It's a fairly bare bones user interface, but that's okay because it's going to do the things I want it to do. And then this is a place where that URL shortener comes in really handy again. No students are going to be able to type that URL out accurately. It's going to take forever. And if your students don't, again, have easy, quick access to their email or a website that you posted this on as a link, you can go to the URL shortener and just write this URL up on the board, and it's much easier for them to type in themselves. And when they search through here, let's say we do pyramids, search, you'll see that all of the results that come through are from those websites that we deemed appropriate for our students. So I know the resources they're getting. If you have younger students, it's really helpful to go ahead and make these choices yourself for them. But certainly as you start working with older students, especially in high school, it's an interesting opportunity to have the kids themselves build these custom search engines. It kind of puts the authority in their hands to make decisions about what is and is not a legitimate resource. And it gives them more opportunity to practice the skill of researching. So you can scaffold it appropriately based on how old your students are. Any questions there? Anyone want to jump in? Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right. I also wanted to show you how I use YouTube in the classroom. YouTube is obviously a great tool for any of us who want to find a clip quickly, but you can create a YouTube account and you can make your own YouTube playlists. And I find these are really helpful in the classroom to not just kind of liven up the classroom for my students, but also it makes it easier for me to keep my resources organized. You can see based a little bit on the playlists that are up on the screen right now what kinds of things I use YouTube for. Right now we're doing a poetry unit, and certainly we read a lot of poems and books and I print them out and my students bring them in. But I also love to annotate our lessons with these videos of poetry. So some of these are spoken word, some of them are little illustrated clips, but it's a nice opportunity to kind of make the poetry feel more alive. There are things that they know really well, like Shel Silverstein, but they've never heard him read his work in his own voice, so it's kind of a cool opportunity. There are also this number 5, Adam Gottlieb, is this 17-year-old kid who has won a bunch of slam poetry competitions, and so I play this for them as an introduction to slam poetry. And it's really exciting for them because they get that he's a young person too, and it's something they've oftentimes never been exposed to. They've never heard that style of poetry performance, so it kind of generates a lot of nice conversation. And certainly, you know, Naomi Shihab Nye is somebody we read in class, and so then they get to see this video of her talking. They see what she looks like, they hear her voice, and that's a nice way to kind of enliven any unit. So if you wanted to make your own playlist, let's say you were doing a unit on the Statue of Liberty, you'd go to the search results. And here too you can filter, which is really helpful because in a classroom you generally don't want to show, a video that's 15 minutes long. Sometimes 5 minutes is too long. So here too with my Statue of Liberty results, I can filter by how recently they've been uploaded. By the result type, I'm going to filter by short. So this is anything around 4 minutes or less. I can search by high def or closed captioning. Creative Commons is another helpful one. We talked about this a little bit with the Google image search, but knowing what the licensing and legal rights are that you have to any video. These Creative Commons ones, if you're doing any sort of student movie making or film editing, you can use those clips and you have permission to change them around and cut them and edit them. So we have the search filters that we want. And then I'm going to look through these clips, and I'll watch all of them because you never know what's going to be in these clips. I certainly watch everything all the way through before I show it to my students. But for our purposes here, we'll just be a little more random about it. So here's a clip, Life After People, Statue of Liberty. And if I watched it and I thought it was relevant to what I was doing in my class, I would click Add To. And then I already have this Statue of Liberty playlist, so I would just add it to that. If you were creating a new playlist, down here you could type in the name of the new playlist and then hit Create. But it's really, it's almost like a filing system. It's a way to keep track of these resources so you're not constantly searching for URLs. And you can autoplay an entire playlist. So if you have a bunch of clips and you want to play them together, you can do it that way as well. You can add a note if you want to remind yourself about something in a particular clip. I find that the YouTube playlists are a really nice addition to my classroom curriculum, not just because it makes it easier for me to keep track of my resources, but also because it kind of allows you to do what I like to call a semi-flipped classroom. Again, I teach 5th graders, and I'm hesitant to fully flip my classroom. I don't think that the girls are quite ready for the responsibility of doing an entire lesson at home, and I certainly don't want to just, send them home with homework to watch me talking at them for 40 minutes or even 20 minutes. But these playlists are a nice sort of in-between for this semi-flipped classroom idea, because I can say to them, tomorrow in class we're going to start a book on Afghanistan that takes place in Afghanistan. Tonight for homework, watch this YouTube playlist, and I've put together a bunch of short clips from the author of the novel we're reading. Sometimes it's just as simple as tourist videos of people who've been to Afghanistan and taken footage, around Kabul or in a marketplace. And so by the time they come back to class and they're ready to sit down and read the novel together, they have some mental sense, some contextual representation of what they're going to be learning about and what these things actually look like in real life, as opposed to just as they're being described in a piece of writing. Any questions? Anything in particular you wanted to? I'm happy to keep going, but I want to make sure everyone's, nope, everyone's fine? Okay. All right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was Google Hangouts, which is obviously what we're in the middle of right now. And Google Hangouts are great for, video chatting with people that you can't get into a room with or want to have a quick chat with. But I've used them to pretty good results in my classroom, doing something called a share and compare, although it's also, I'm sure you've heard of Mystery Skype, where a class will hook up with another classroom somewhere else in the country or the world, and they won't identify where they're from, and the kids try to guess based on asking questions about landmarks and sort of cultural, pop culture references to those places. But the way I've used Google Hangouts in my classroom is for something we call share and compare. And I've done it 2 years in a row now, and my students have absolutely loved it. I have a colleague who's a teacher in Los Angeles. I have a colleague who's a teacher in Nebraska, in Bellevue, Nebraska. And the three of us have worked together to come up with this share and compare lesson, we brainstormed a list of questions we wanted all our students to be able to research and then answer. And they were pretty basic things, basic facts about our home state and our home city population, landmarks, climate, geography, and then also some more personal questions that the kids really get into, like what's the most popular lunch choice, what game do we love to play at recess, how much homework do you get a night, do you have a school uniform, how big your school is, where you have recess, that sort of thing. Being in New York City, we don't have a lot of big wide open spaces for our school, but we do have Central Park a few blocks away. So that's obviously an interesting and unique feature of being a kid in school in New York City, whereas a student in Los Angeles is going to have a huge playground and pretty nice weather most days of the year to be outdoors. So the 3 teachers generated a list of questions, and we used a Google Doc that we shared and we all contributed to, and we did a few Google Hangouts just between the 3 adults to kind of plan things out. And then we came up with probably 15 to 20 questions and assigned those questions to each of our students. So each student was responsible for finding this information and then presenting it visually in some way. My girls have one-to-one iPads in 5th grade, so they worked on iPads creating some sort of slide, either with text or an image, sometimes actually going around our school and taking photographs. Other girls preferred to use paper, and so they drew, but some sort of visual representation of their fact, how many people live in New York City. And then we get the 3 classes together all on Google Hangouts, so it's just like we're doing right now, but with 3 groups of students. And they took turns in sort of a round-robin way, sharing facts about their schools. It was really fun for them, I think, because it gives your students a chance to see what's happening outside the walls of their classroom, to be able to connect with kids that they're not really going to run into in their day-to-day life. And also it gave them a sense of how similar things are and how different things are between school groups. So obviously everybody loves chicken nuggets, everybody loves playing basketball at recess, but learning that our Manhattan school was in what essentially used to be an apartment building and is very narrow and tall versus a school in Nebraska or California, which is much more spread out, was really fascinating for those kids in Nebraska and California. Alternately, in New York City, we don't have earthquakes, we don't have tornadoes, but in Nebraska and California, those students could talk really knowledgeably about what it's like to prepare for a drill for that. So my girls in Manhattan were fascinated by an earthquake drill and what that was like, and the kids in California got a chance to feel like real experts, and they could teach the other students something that not everyone knew about. So certainly Google Hangouts and this share and compare idea is a really nice way to use a free Google tool to get your kids thinking outside the community they're a part of. And a friend of mine who I met at the Google Teacher Academy named Brent Catlett actually has a website that he started. I'm going to go back to screen share for a minute. So he has started a website called eduhangout.org, which is basically just like a way for lots of different teachers, that's not loading, for lots of different teachers to, oops, maybe his site's down right now. Let's see if I can get it for you. There we go. So this is his site. There's Brent down there. He's a great guy. He's on Twitter as well. And he created this online community for educators to connect and get in touch with one another, so you can find other classes and other teachers from all over the world that you can connect your classrooms with. So this is a really great resource, EduHangout. If you are interested in using Google Hangouts as a way to kind of open up your classroom a little bit. Any questions? Nope? Okay. I know we're nearing the end of your day, so I'm just going to show you a couple more cool things, and then I'll see if there's any questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So if you go back to my blog, down here at the bottom, I have Google Art Project and Google World Wonders. These are really great resources, full of very rich, beautiful, vivid imagery. Basically, as it was described to me, Google took the same cameras they use for Google Street View, but they turned them onto wonders of the world and famous art collections in the world. So if you can't take a field trip, right now I'm in Google World Wonders, if you can't take a field trip to the White House, which most of us, oh, I meant to be in cultural, here we go, sorry. Most of us can't just hop on the bus and take a trip to the White House. You can take your students there through something like Google Art Project. You can click on Museum View, and again, you'll see, I hope it comes through via the Hangout. Certainly if you go and navigate from your own computer, you'll see it firsthand, how rich and high definition these images are. So you can take your students through that way and talk about what you're seeing. I know at my school, here, let's try to get a painting up. Let's go to collections. You can look at different collections throughout the world. So at my school, I know that our art teachers will use this sometimes because the images are so high quality and you can get so close up to them. Again, I hope it's as clear for you as it is for me on my screen. You can see brush strokes, you can see every little detail of these paintings because the images are so clear. And as an art teacher, that creates a nice opportunity to have conversations about different styles. Certainly for art and art history, these are great tools. For the World Wonders, it's similar, but instead of just art pieces, it's locations. So you can go to location. Here's a temple in Cambodia. Depending on what you're studying, you can find whatever you want to look at or show with your students. And again, it's just a way to feel like you're leaving your classroom without having to spend the time and the money and the permission slips, which, you know, most of us probably couldn't do for all the trips we'd want to take, to show your students something different. So that covers all of everything I wanted to share with you today. One more chance, any questions, anybody? No? I always like to end these sessions by asking if there's anything you're doing in your classrooms with technology that you feel is working really well and you'd like to share with us so the room can learn from you. Is there anyone doing anything cool they want to talk about? Okay, no problem, everybody. All right, well, I hope that you learned about some cool tools that you can maybe take back into your classroom, and thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.